Welcome to the Unapologetically Unstoppable podcast. I'm your host, Jeanette Peterson. And on this podcast, we talk about how to partner with the Holy Spirit with your business and how to grow businesses with practical tips and tricks. Get ready. Here we go. Hey girl, hey, welcome to this episode of the Unapologetically Unstoppable podcast. And today I've got my new friend, Brooke Elder, and she is so amazing. And you guys are just going to love her because I feel like she's just like me. She's a seasoned entrepreneur, business strategist, and passionate advocate for work-life alignment. With a track record of success that includes selling one business and having another one acquired, Brooke understands the challenges and triumphs of building and scaling companies. As a homeschool mom of four, she's mastered the art of balancing a thriving career with a fulfilling family life. Brooke's mission is to help visionary business owners strengthen their families, optimize their businesses, and empower their clients and team members. Through her innovative approach to systems, processes, and leadership, she's speaking my language, y'all. She guides entrepreneurs in creating purpose-driven companies that support their dreams and values. Let's go, right? Let's go. Brooke's unique blend of business acumen and family-first philosophy makes her a trusted advisor for those seeking to align their true north in both life and business. And that true north is obviously Jesus, y'all. Thank you.
That's right.
Welcome, Brooke. I'm so excited that you're here. I'm so excited. So tell me a little bit more about your business, because processes, systems, yes, let's go, because I don't think that you can have a successful business and scale without processes and systems, because that's what allows us to be the multi-passionate, like high-achieving women that we are, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And like, I remember when I was building my second business, my first business, I actually had like no systems in it. And like all the systems were in my head. And when I went to sell it, it got appraised for a certain amount and I sold it for 15 cents on the dollar. And the reason for that was because I had zero systems. So my next business I built, I was like, okay, we got to like systematize all of this. But the problem was I started systematizing with people instead of like actual systems and automations and things like that. So I learned a lot in doing that. And it made it so I could really, my whole business was pretty much running on its own. And it made it so my family could go and travel the world by sailboat for a year. So it's systems and processes are amazing.
Okay. Sailboat for a year? Yes, please. Like, tell me how that even came about. Like, how did you say, okay, was it your idea? Was it your husband's idea? Like, how did this, like, who came to who? I need to hear the like conversation.
Yeah. So it was actually my husband. So I grew up sailing, but my husband was watching YouTube and he saw this family that was out sailing and like seeing all these countries. And he's like, that would be really cool. And my first thought was like, I want to live on a boat, But we kind of like put it off to the side and we're like, well, my business wasn't quite ready yet. And then we were praying about how we could help our kids become closer to God because we wanted to give them experiences where we knew it may be hard experiences, but it's in those hard moments where you actually like find Jesus,
Yeah.
And so we wanted to give them those moments. And God kept telling us, go live on a boat, go live on a boat. And I'm like, but I don't want to. So it took some time, but we eventually sold pretty much everything we owned. We had 7 totes of stuff and that was it. Everything else we sold. And we moved to South Africa and bought a sailboat and sailed across the Atlantic and lots of craziness. But yeah, that's how it happened.
That's so amazing. Like, just even like how many people thought you were crazy? I feel like that's like a full,
so
like,
many.
Yeah. Like that's a Noah moment being like, I'm going to sell all my stuff and we're going to move to South Africa. Or we're going to live on a boat until God tells us that we're done in this season and we're just going to do it.
Yeah, it definitely, lots of people thought we were crazy, especially since like we had, that dream house that it was up in the mountains and we had worked so hard for and all these things. And I realized like things are just stuff. Like you can't take any of that with you, and I got so detached from things and it was more about creating those amazing moments with my kids.
Yeah. So I am a millennial and my mom is a boomer. And every time I go home, she sends me with a box of stuff of like from my childhood. So like in those 7 totes, did you have anything from your kids' childhood that you kept? Like, what did you keep? Because I'm still struggling with like, I don't want to keep all these teeth and stuff, but like,
Yeah.
do I?
Yeah. Well, each of my kids got a tote and they got to choose what they wanted to keep, and some of the things they were like, I don't know if I want to keep this. So we took a picture of them with the thing and then we could get rid of it,
I love
So that way, because a picture doesn't take up space.
that. Yes. So tell me about this first business you built. So you told me that you built it to 7 figures and then you sold it. Like, how did that happen? Like, was it
Yeah.
overnight? Obviously not, but like,
No. So it was a web design and marketing agency. And I taught myself how to build WordPress websites because I originally actually was an elementary school teacher and I taught for 4 years. And then once I started having kids, I came home and I wanted to still do something. So I'm like, I'll just start a preschool, which I actually never ended up doing, but I needed a website. So I learned how to design websites. And then that skill, I just started designing websites for friends. And then I started advertising a little bit. Like this is 2008. So it was a long time ago. And so I slowly just started building up, like social media started coming into the scene around then. And so I started running social media campaigns for brick and mortar businesses. And I built that up, but I got to a point where I was like, I just didn't want to do it anymore. And so I was at a conference and one of the speakers at this conference said, you'd never build a business unless you want to sell it.
mm,
And so, and then he talked about how like, even if you end up not selling it, but you still, if you build it so you can sell it, then you're building an asset. And that's what gave me this idea of like, maybe I could just sell this business. So I hired a broker, I guess is what they're called. And they put together a whole proposal and they went out to all of their buyers and they found a buyer for me. So
that's so amazing. Like I read this book called, oh man, the name escapes me right now, but it's basically, it's E-Myth Revised. And it's basically talking about how to franchisable your business, like put all the things in place so that way you can just like get it and go. Because I think when we start making these businesses as women, we're not really thinking long term. Sometimes it's just like, I just need to make some money so I can go to Target on the weekends and not ask my husband and do the thing, right?
yeah,
But when we think about it from a long term perspective of being like, I do want to sell this at some point, or I want to make this so that way I can get out of it and I'm not creating a job and handcuffs for myself.
right.
It's a different mentality. Like you were talking about, like you're not attached to the things you have in your house. It's the same thing. I'm not attached to my business. It is not a part of me. It is an extension of me. But like my kids, it's gonna have to go off one day and be on its own. Like,
Yeah.
I love it. I'm gonna raise it, but it is not me.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So good.
Yeah, exactly. And I hadn't really thought about businesses like that until I went to that conference. And so then it does make you, the decisions that you make, it makes you change certain decisions that you're making as you're building your business.
So you've been homeschooling for how long?
6 years now.
So you started off with your kids in kindergarten homeschooling, or like back and forth? How did that work for you?
So they went to public school and so my oldest was in 7th grade when we started homeschooling. And it was because the year before, all my kids got sick. They got like bronchitis and all of them missed school for like a week. So I went to the school to get all of their stuff that they needed to make up so I could help them so they would be caught up. And I looked at what they were doing and I'm like, this is all just like crap busy work, and being a teacher, I was like, I don't want to do this. But I knew that that's what we needed to do. And it was interesting because that year when I was like setting my goals at the beginning of the year, I really had it on my heart that I needed to only work 4 hours a day. And I was like, well, that will be great because then I'll have so much time to do other things and stuff. So I rearranged my schedule. So that was like January. And then by March, like I kept feeling this, you need to homeschool your kids. And I'm like, but I don't want to, because that next year, my youngest was going into kindergarten. And that's like, when all moms are like, all my kids are in school, And I talked with my husband and he wasn't super on board at first, but the more we prayed about it, the more we're like, yep, this is what we need to do. And it was the school year was 2019, 2020.
Oh,
And so we started homeschooling that year. And it was awesome because when everything shut down, like our lives, nothing changed. Like I already worked from home. We were already homeschooling. Like it was no big deal for us, and I watched my friends who now had to start homeschooling their kids and they were really struggling. And I remember like at the beginning, it was hard, but I also had like all summer to prepare. We had a
right.
homeschool room get all set up and all the things. So my youngest was in kindergarten when we started, and she's now starting 5th grade and has never been to public school, which it's very interesting seeing the difference of my oldest who went through like all of elementary in public school. And now he is a senior, but like seeing the difference in like even the way that he works, and like he doesn't like to read, and my youngest loves to read, it's very interesting to see their philosophies on school.
Yeah. That's very interesting. I never thought about that. I have friends who their kids have gone to, I think, up to like 3rd or 4th grade, and then they took them out. And it is different, right? Like I see the difference in maturity and what they enjoy, and like the want to be with their friends more versus being with mom more. I feel like it's a different environment that they had to be in, right? Not saying one is good or bad, but it's very different.
Yeah, it is very different. And like my kids, they are each other's best friends.
Yes.
They are working on getting other friends, or trying to push them out there to get other friends, which normally, like, I know when I was a teenager, I was like, I'm hanging out with my friends. I'm not hanging out with my siblings, but they just want to like hang out together. And I think part of that too is, I mean, we did live on a sailboat in both cultures, but they just love hanging out with each other. And honestly, they're friends that are going to be friends for their entire lives.
Yes. Like those bonds they're forming right now are like the most critical bonds. You know what I'm saying? Like this is going to be just fantastic for them throughout their entire life. They're going to be there for each other for always. Like, I feel like that's what I want for my kids, right? That's why I started homeschooling. So tell me, you mentioned a couple of things, how like God has been telling you to do this and do that. What other ways has God supernaturally shown up for you in your business and in your life?
Oh, so many ways. I made the decision when I started my second business, which really was probably like my 6th business, because I had a lot of businesses that failed. I was like, this is a great idea. No one wants to buy it. But when I was doing my coaching business, I decided that I was going to make God my CEO. Like he was the one in charge. And I would have, and I still do this, like once a week, I have meetings with God. And I sit down and like I do a lot of journaling, and I'll write down, okay, here are the plans for the week. This is what we're working towards and everything. And I like write it all down. And then I find it helps if I change the color of my pen. And then I just sit and listen, and I write down, and it's like God speaking to me, telling me these are the things that I need to do. And like he's given me so many things, like the pillars of my business, of the things that I need to talk about, and like different aspects of like my avatar and how to do the marketing. He's given me so many things and put amazing people into my life to help me run my business. It doesn't mean that everything is awesome. It doesn't mean that like I don't have moments where I'm like, I have a big launch and no one signed up. Like all the things that we like struggle with, like I still have all those things, but I don't go into freak out mode. Like I know that God has me, and I say the saying all the time, like this experience is perfect for me. Like whatever is happening, because I know that God is teaching me through these things.
I love that. I love that. I wear this bracelet every day, and it says, God's got this, because like I have to remember and get out of my own brain. Like if I'm obedient, and if I'm listening to God, I can't fail. No matter what the actual outcome is, I'm not failing, and I'm not a failure. And God's got this. It's up to him. If I'm obedient, it's up to him to bring the people. If I'm obedient, it's up to him to bring the money. If I'm obedient, it's up to him to bring the employees and the helpers. I just have to be obedient and do what God is telling me to do. I love that. I love that posture. and that mentality of just being like, I'm just going to follow God and ask him and follow God, like actually follow God. I feel like there's a difference between like being a Christian and being a Jesus follower. You know what I mean? Like it's different.
Yeah.
And I love
Yeah.
that you're
Well,
like,
I have a bracelet that I wear too. And on it says, it's Romans 8:28, which is my favorite scripture, that God works all things for their good that love him. And so that's why, like, nothing is a failure because God's going to work it for your good. And there's so many things that I've seen, like, even in my past businesses and stuff, where in the moment I'm like, how am I going to get through this thing? And then I look back and I'm like, oh, okay, I see how God has changed that into something that actually is very beautiful now,
in hindsight, sometimes
Yes.
it's hard in the moment, but you're like,
totally. That's why you keep remembering. Romans 8:28, like it's going to be okay.
Yes. What has been your biggest struggle from getting to where you are now?
Honestly, I feel like this last year has probably been my biggest struggle. And it's because, I had built a business and sold it. Then I built another business and it was acquired by a network marketing company. And so like I had all of these successes and then it's like, okay, well now what? And the hardest thing is because I have so much experience, I could do so many things. And it's like, well, what is it that God really wants me to do? And so instead, the other businesses have been, I know the skill, so I'm going to make a business around that skill. And this has really been listening to God, figuring out what he wants. And like, it really has taken me a year to put this all together. And every time I think I got it, I'll try something and it doesn't work. And I'll go back to him and he's like, okay, you needed that little piece, but now I'm going to bring you another piece, so usually like I'm very intuitive. And if you know Strength Finder, my first strength is futuristic. So I know if I do this one step, these are the next 10 steps, and I've always really run my business that way. And being on a boat and this experience has really taught me like God will give me the next step, not the next 10, which I'm used to, just the next step. So it's like walking every step into the dark and then you see the light over and over and over, So that has been probably the biggest challenge, but also like it's so beautiful. And it really is letting go of all of your own expectations. It's the complete surrender to God.
Yes. Yes. My number 2 is futuristic. So like, I feel you. Because I'm like, oh, I love puzzles because I'm like, oh, you put this piece here and you do this and you do this and bam, you got it.
You can just see the big picture. And
yes.
And this time God has taken that away from me. And so all I can see is like the next step. And as soon as I do that step, that's the thing, I have to do it. Then I get to see what the next piece is. And it's been very frustrating because that's not normally how I work.
I feel like God has also been doing that to me in this iteration of business that I'm in. But like, because I'm like, I want to know all the steps. I want to get here. I want to get there. Mm-hmm. But like you're right. Like when you do the next step is when he gives you the next piece. You can't wait. You can't see it. You have to do the next piece. And I think that's how God, for me at least, keeps me in step with him instead of me trying to like run ahead of him and do all the things because I think I know. But he's like, I want you to walk in step with me because I've got something even bigger than what you can see. Mm-hmm. And I'm like, but I see this. And he's like, no, baby girl, I got this other thing. I need you to just do this one thing. And that's so hard sometimes.
Yes. Well, and I see how so living on a boat, you can't plan anything because everything depends on weather. So even like where you're going to be in the next week, you can kind of have an idea, but you only know really like 3 days in advance. And even like what's forecast for the day sometimes is not even that, And so like we were in Grenada and we had a plan to get to the US and really we could only plan 1 week at a time. And people were asking us like, well, what are you going to get to the US? We're like, we don't know, and it helps you to like live in the moment. So that experience helped me to like live in today And now applying that to business, like if I wouldn't have had that experience, I think it would have been a lot harder. But because like our whole life, everything we did was like you could only go day to day, it helps strengthen that muscle.
I need that muscle.
Yeah, it's a tricky one. And honestly, I don't think I would have learned that if I wouldn't have lived on a boat because like you're just forced to do it that way.
Also, that does not sound like a fun muscle to try and stretch. Like that does not sound fun necessarily.
Yeah, but it makes it so like you really do enjoy the moments because you're not thinking about anything else. It's like, what do we want to do today? Like, oh, we pulled into this anchorage. It's beautiful. Let's go swimming. And like you really learn to live in the moment. And so that is a hard thing. Like now that we're back on land and getting into the same things, it's harder to remember to like just live right now.
Plus, I think society is not telling us to do that. You know what I mean?
No.
Like that's very countercultural.
Yes. Yeah.
Very interesting. I feel like you've got such wisdom and such insight. Thank you for that. So do you think that that was the one thing on this journey that's made you unstoppable is like to learn to live in the moment and to follow God's very steps?
Yeah. Because if you are surrendering everything to God, you aren't worrying about the future because you know God has your future. It makes it much easier to live in the moment and just like be present now. Be present with the people you're talking to on social media. Be present when you're on Zoom talking to somebody. Like, don't be thinking about all these other things you have to do and deadlines that you have and like all these things that used to be going on in my mind in the background. Like it really, it's like cleaning the clutter. You know, I had to do it in my physical space and get rid of all the clutter. And then God helped me to remove it from like my mental space. And so it's much more freeing and much more light because you can just be in the moment and you know that God's got you.
I love that. I love that. Okay. So tell me a little bit about what you do and how you do it. Like we talked about it, we talked around it, but like give me your sales pitch.
So I now started a new business called True North, and it really is aligning what is your true north. And so you have to first align like and define what your true north is for you. And when I was putting all of this together, I mean, I've been through lots of coaching programs and had mentors and all of this, and they like talk about what's your 5-year plan, like create this plan for your business. Where do you want to be? And like, you have to become that person that like embodies that thing 5 years from now. But everything was always very focused on business. It wasn't like, and that's just like one small part of who you are. And so when I was looking at this, I take more of this holistic approach of how do we take our business life, but also like, how do I want to show up as a mom? How do I want to show up as a wife? How do I want to show up as a friend? And you define all those areas of your life. And that's what then becomes your true north. And when it is anchored in Christ, like everything just happens. And then it's like I look at it like you're kind of creating your own glasses. So then when you put those glasses on and you look at making decisions, you have a new lens to look at things. Yeah. And so does it align with that or not? If it doesn't, then you don't do it. So it makes it a lot easier, especially when it comes to decision making, but aligning. So that's what I first start helping people with. And then we look into, okay, how do these systems and stuff then play into that? Because a lot of the times people will create systems or they're like, oh, this sounds like a really good strategy. Let's start implementing that. But it doesn't actually align with their end goal and their business values. So we make sure all of that gets aligned.
Dude, I love that. I love that. Especially when you said the lens, because I think that sometimes we like even hurt people, right? They have a lens that they look through and everything is negative and hateful and angry. But when we're like deciding what our lens should be and how we're going to show up, and then we put that lens on and we're like, okay, they want me to run the Bible study at church. But in my lens, I want to make sure that I'm really pouring into children, not necessarily women. So I'm going to say no to that and work in children's ministry instead. Like just, it would be good, right? And it is glorifying God if you're working in the church in any capacity, right? But you know that you feel God is saying, no, you're for the children. So like saying no to that so you can work on something else. I feel like a lot of women come to me and they're like, but all of this is so good. Yes, it is good. But you have to say no to some of these things. You can't do everything.
Yeah.
That's
You look
such a good way.
At different choices, like, and I always look at it like, is it good? Is it better? Or is it best?
Yes.
So you look at good, better, best. And sometimes, because there's a lot of good we can do, but sometimes that good is someone else's best. And so it's much better for someone else to fulfill that role than it is for you, even though it would be good for you. I much rather would do best than good.
Yes. Yes. I love that. So good. So good. So what is, I mean, you talked about it already, your favorite Bible verse. And you kind of talked about why.
Romans
Do you have
8:28.
another one?
It's
or that's
my favorite.
Yeah, Romans 8:28. It's so good. It's so good.
Yeah, really, all of like Romans 8, the whole thing is just like so good. 8:28 is my favorite.
Because it's just so easy for me to remember to be like, I love God. He's going to work this out. I don't have to worry about it.
Yep.
I really don't. I love God. And I'm doing this with all my heart because I love God. So he's going to work it out. No matter what the outcome is, he's going to figure it out.
Yeah.
Not my problem. That part's not my problem.
Exactly. And it really does, because all God wants is our heart.
Yes.
That's it.
Yeah.
And so if we can surrender that to him, like, he will give us all he has. So in theory, it's like, oh, well, that sounds easy. But in practice, it is a lot harder.
I've got like a little affirmation that I say every day. Like I've gone through several iterations, but right now is, God, I surrender it all to you as soon as I wake up, because I'm like, I need to start in that posture of surrender, because you have to do it every day. You have to like consciously do it. I mean, it gets easier, but you got to, like, I need to just keep going, keep surrendering.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
I was talking with a friend the other day about like surrendering and like staying close to God. And I was like, I kind of imagine like God is like a tree or something, these big branches, and like you're like right up next to the trunk, and that's where you're safe. But if you start like venturing out and like going out from underneath the branches, and you start looking out and you start seeing the world, like, it's super crazy. There's all these things, you start getting like all this panic. And that's when you're like, this isn't working anymore. And you like start going into freak out mode. It's like, just come back to the tree, like hold on to that trunk. So I imagine myself when I start going into that like freak out mode, I'm like, nope, I got to go close to God. And I just imagine myself like holding this trunk, and I'm like, I'm safe. It's going to be okay.
That's such a good visual, because he is like that. He's just so big. We're out here in Northern California, and like the sequoia trees are humongous to see. And like, if God is that tree, I should just stay right here. I don't have to worry about it. I'm not going to get any rain on me. I'm not going to get any, like, it'll be fine.
Yep. Because all things will work out for your good. And so you just got to stay close to the truth.
I love that. I love that. So how do people work with you? How do they get to know you better? Where are you at? Facebook, Instagram, all the things.
So Facebook is the best place. You can find me at my like profile is facebook.com/therealbrookeelder. So you can find me there. And then do have a free group that if anyone wants to join, it's called the Ops Yacht Club. So they can go to opsyachtclub.com. So all of my whole branding and everything is all boating and sailing. So that's our free group.
I love that. Thank you so much for being here. Is there any like last takeaways you would like to leave the audience with?
Just take time with God every day. That, like, if you're looking for the secret weapon, what's like the one tip that's going to make me successful? Listen to God. So I find that journaling has just been really, really good to like even just journal out my prayers and just write them out, and then change the color of pen, and then just listen. God will talk to you. Just write down any thoughts that come to your mind, and you're going to be amazed. Like, I look back, I've been doing this now for about 5 years, and I go back and I read through. I don't ever read my prayers. I just read what God has said to me. And I'm amazed how many of the things that it's like, oh, yep, I see how he was preparing me for this. And so that's the biggest thing that you can do that's going to make a difference in your life and in your business.
Thank you so much, Brooke. That's so powerful. Thank you guys for listening to this episode of Unapologetically Unstoppable. And all the show notes will be down below. And remember that you can find Brooke on Facebook at The Real Brooke Elder and in her free group, the Ops Yacht Club. Talk to you guys soon. Thank you so much for listening to this week's episode. Go ahead and leave a review to let everybody else know how much this episode has impacted you. And you know what? I would love to get to know you even better. So go ahead and send me a DM over on Instagram at Jeanette.Peterson or come to my free group at JeanettePeterson.com/group. I'll see you guys over there.